computer. All right. Well, welcome to the September astrophotography group meeting. We've got some neat stuff going on tonight. We always start the program with asking the experts any questions that anybody has. And Keith Latiole has asked me a question. I said this would be a great one for this group to answer and help him along. And so, Keith, you ready to talk about what you like to know?
I am here. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the deal, guys and ladies. I have been in contact with Santa Claus, and I have done my best begging, and Santa has said, well, if you continue to be good, yeah, you can invest in something. So I'm really looking at trying to upgrade my camera. And so I would like to get the collective thoughts of this group, because I don't think anybody is better than that, as to what I should do. So let me kind of spill this out for you and tell you what I've got, and you can kind of think about that and give me some ideas if that's okay. So mount is a software bisque. It's the MyT mount. It's been back to their shop within the last 12 months for a motor change that they swear never happens. They never go out, but they did. And they completely QC'd it and did everything, checked it out, and it's running great. It really is. Easily 5 minutes, and I do not even have a new periodic error correction model in place for it. So it's in great shape. I have no problems with that. The telescope is a William Optics refractor. It's a 102, so it's got a 703 focal length with a 6.9 focal ratio. It's got a 3-inch rack and pinion. Again, working great. I'd probably need to pick Rick's brain about getting the lenses cleaned. Maybe we'll do that as well. The other thing I've got is and this is probably the weak point in my chain, is I've got an SBIG 8300 camera. It has been with me probably about 5 years, and I bought it used. It's a mono. It's got a 7-position filter wheel, an off-axis guider with a Starlight Express camera. So the it's still working well, but if anything, it's probably the weak point in the chain. And I'd love to kind of get some thoughts from you guys as far as where maybe I could go. Now, here's again, I'm begging Santa, and Santa said, hey, if you keep picking up your dirty socks and eating your vegetables, how about in the neighborhood of about $3,500? Now, that would be for anything that I need, the camera, the guider, if necessary. I could use the current filters that I have. They're not a great set, but they're about mid-range, and I could probably use them. So that's my question. Can I do it? And anybody got any thoughts on it? Now, again, I'd like to stay with the potential to guide, but if I've got to give up anything, I can certainly give up that for a little while, at least until the Easter Bunny comes around. So, anybody, I'll throw out two things.
I have a question about your filter system.
Yep.
You're saying it's an SBIG filter system, right?
Yes.
So you would probably want an SBIG camera because you have that in place.
Well, they're separate. So they're Beta filters. They're 36 millimeter, and I've got the full set, the LRGB, and then the HA.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the wheel.
Probably thinking about the filter wheel. Yeah.
Oh, the filter wheel. No. I'd have to get a new filter wheel too.
It won't.
Why is that?
It's
because it won't fit the
It's not gonna
SBIG
fit
model is made specifically for it.
Okay.
That's the one that I've used that one for years, and I let Freddie's got it. I'm going to try to do something with it. But yeah, it's an SBIG stuff. Now the filters are individual inch and a quarter, as I recall.
Yes.
And so they, you could probably use those again if you get a filter wheel with inch and a quarter.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Well, there's some there. I know Brent is a ZWO person, and Steve.
Yeah, I mean, are you looking at full frame or APS-C crop sensor? Do you have a preference?
I'll be honest, I don't have a preference right now. I would say from at least what I've read, full frame would be nice.
Well,
It'd be pricey.
if you're in full frame mode, you're like 3,800 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I can tell you, like I use the ZWO 2600 mono camera,
Yep.
and I absolutely love it. Like it is absolutely a work of art in terms of kind of quality and the results that I've gotten out of it. So I've got nothing but high praise for that.
And
So-
you'll have money left over for a guide camera if you buy that one.
And you pick up a ZWO filter wheel as well to go with it. I mean, that's maybe, you can probably find one of those for like 200 on used.
Yep.
I'm betting. So
Well, and they also have the new one that's got the duo, so it's got the extra,
I don't recommend that. That's only
No.
on the color. That's only on the
Okay.
color camera.
Yeah,
I think if you're in mono lane, you need to stay there.
yeah, I mean the duo will work, but
And they are releasing a duo in the mono version.
Right. Yes. Yes.
it makes me leery. I got to see it and see results first. Just
Well,
Yeah.
what those filters can do to it. I got to see it in action.
I have a friend who bought it and he put a narrowband filter on it and it didn't guide.
Yeah, that's
It-
what
it-
worries me.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it depends on how narrow the narrowband is. I think if you're like a 5 nanometers or wider, you're probably going to be okay. But if you get below 5 nanometers on your
He was
filter,
at 3, John. He was
yeah,
at 3.
you're going to have to take longer exposures out of a little bit of guide camera to get something. Then your guiding is almost going to be pointless if you don't have a really good. But the mount he's got, does he really need to be guiding with for that software bisque mount?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those higher mounts, they don't need to be guided at all because they track so well.
Yeah.
You can almost get away without it.
Well, that's what Keith was saying. You had 5 minutes unguided.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Easily.
yeah, so I wouldn't even worry about a guide camera like that. Just get the and you got a 102, so the 3.76 micron on a lot of the CWO cameras and a lot of the other ones that are the APS-C size or anything, that's usually their normal standard size. If you had a
Mhm.
longer focal length, then you're going to want a bigger pixel size. But that size there, 3.76, probably work fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of your imaging circle on your 102 and how much is it going to illuminate. If you're going to teach you might be able to get a full frame camera, but it may not illuminate the whole sensor. You might end up having a lot of vignetting around the corners and stuff.
Yeah. I haven't looked that far into it, but yeah, probably not go that route then.
Next, that's what I was looking at with mine. But I got a William Optics GT71, and I can do a APS-C size no problem, and it doesn't even barely vignette at all. I can probably get a full frame on it, but it's going to vignette some.
Yeah.
But I want to get a full frame camera for my Celatron 9.25, but I need to get a bigger pixel size for it, and it'll definitely illuminate a bigger sensor on that one because it's got a wider back end for it.
Yeah.
Well, if Devin were to hear it, he'd tell you get the 6200 mono, which is about $3,800. It's full frame. He loves that camera. He went nuts with it. But I think my recommendation is to go with the 2600 APS-C. It's smaller, and it leaves room for the other stuff. And look at Brent's results.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really great all-around camera size, and I mean, it'll fit your 102 fine. And even if you move up in scope to like a 130 or 140, it'll still work with that perfectly fine. It's just that when you start getting to the longer focal lengths, above 1200, 1500 range and higher, 2000, then you're going to want a bigger pixel sensor.
Well,
Yeah.
I've gone through all that, John, and I had the 9mm S-Big, and I went back down to the 3.76. So
No, I don't think you have to go 9 on it, but I mean, like if you go to a 4 range, like my DSLR is like a 4.3, I think it is for the micron. So I wouldn't go higher than a 5 or a 6 range unless you got a gigantic scope that need the real estate for it. But if you got poor tracking too, but since you got really great guiding, a non-guided scope or a mount that can guide 5 minutes, unguided basically, then you can get by with the smaller pixel size.
well, you also want, I mean, a smaller chip because you're going to stay with an 1.25" filters too.
Right.
Yeah, if you go full frame, you got to get different filter set. You got to go to 2 inch.
Yeah, that pretty much kind of cuts it out. I think I like Brent's suggestion. And I do think ZWO has, somebody's got I saw it today, a 2600 kit, which would come with the filter wheel and the OAG, and get that for about $3,200. So still got a couple $100 to take Santa Claus out and tell her or him thank you.
You get one of them tiny guide cameras.
Yeah.
Those
Later on, yeah.
those are like $100-$150.
Yeah, and just do that later on, because again, as long as if I got the setup for it, I just get the camera later on. I wouldn't have to, if I needed it, I could go ahead and again do without the guiding part, unless I wanted to. But again, the mount's working so well, it's kind of hard to argue with it.
Yeah, that's true. 5 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
That's Merrill numbers.
Well,
Yeah.
Merrill has 10-minute no guiding.
He's got a lot more than that. Yeah.
Okay, but 5. That's
How are you measuring? You're saying that you have at least 5 minutes. I mean, you're measuring eccentricity, or I mean, this scientific based, or what's your
Nothing's not scientific at this point in time. Just taking the pictures and measuring things. Yeah.
the stars are round, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Or as you can magnify the round. Yeah.
Okay. That's probably really good then. Okay, so one thing I recommended, Keith, check Astromart or Cloudy Nights. You can find a used one for probably half price. I mean,
Probably not that camera. That camera is like nobody wants to get rid of it.
It's on fire right now. So yeah, if you find one at half price, take it immediately.
The people that got the first revision of it want to get rid of it because they have the oil issue that goes across the sensor when it gets too warm.
Canwar had that. You give it to them, it'll come back to you in about a week and a half.
Yeah, and I've even seen online where people have done that and they've actually sent it back 3 times for the same problem.
Oh, you're
but
kidding.
The newer model camera that it is, the newer version of it, is better. I don't think it has that issue. And that's what I was looking at, the Player One cameras. They got the and it's like $3,600 I think for it, with a few other things. And it's the same sensor and everything else. I haven't heard nothing about any oil leaks and stuff like that on it. So.
Yeah, I've never had that problem with either of my ZWO cameras, but I know it does happen. I don't think it's as widespread as the stories might make you think.
Yeah.
So
that's what I think. It's just that first run. The first run's got the problem with it. I mean, because I got a 533, and I've had 0 issues with it, other than if I cool it down too far, it does kind of get slow on. It might, try to save an image. It'll go slow, and I don't have to cool it that far. So I can go from like today's, if it was like in the 80, 90 degree tip, I can go down to 0 degrees and perfectly fine. If I try to go to -10, I might have issues with it in the warmer months and stuff. But I can take a frame today and take a frame at 0 degrees and it almost look the same on the dark frame. In fact, I don't even shoot dark frames. I went through the whole process of shooting a whole dark library at different, times, like, oh, let's do 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, whatever. I stuck it in the freezer, did all the whole works, and it's like I ain't using none of them. In fact, when I used them, it made my imaging worse. So I just spent all day doing the image, the dark library for nothing, basically. So I don't even use darks. All I do is I'll just
you don't
do the
calibrate
flats.
with darks. Okay.
Nope, I don't calibrate with darks. I basically dither, and then I'll try to get a good set of flats, but lately my flats haven't been working with the PixInsight. I haven't tried them lately with the last one. And also depends on the image. Like Galaxy images, I can tell I'll have to have really flat. But with I got a nebula in the full frame, then you can't any blemishes in there, you can't really find it because the nebula is kind of blocking them all out. So you don't
That's
even
true.
So like what I posted with the Wolf Rayet star, the 134, that's no calibration frames at all on it. That's just straight up, camera stacked and played with, and here you go. So that's where most of them been lately.
That's good. That's really cool. Okay, Keith, what else did you need to know?
That's it. Thanks for the advice. I think I do like the 2600 and the fact that Brent's got one I can lean on him to help me put it together.
That's a good.
I don't think you'd be disappointed. There's other good options too, but I got nothing but positive things to say about that one.
Yeah, it has the dew heaters. It has the you can cool it to 30 degrees if you want. So it's got a lot of bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And
Good.
how many USB ports does that have, Brent, on the back?
Yeah, two on the back.
It's got 2. Yeah.
2.
Yeah, you plug in your USB 3 and it's got 2 USB 2.0 ports in the back.
There you go.
It's like the standard GWO in the back. Almost the most of them that are cooled, it's got the 2 USB ports on the back, 2.0, and then they got the standard 3.0 plug-in.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the 2600 to get as well. Looking at either getting the mono or the color. It's just waiting on money.
That's right. That's it.
Like everything else, I'm waiting on a new. I need to get a new mount, something that can handle the 9 1/4 easier and better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes money.
Well, maybe if we're as good as Keith and Santa Claus.
Yes, right.
Might get us.
I'll give you my Santa list.
That's right. So we have that to look forward to.
Okay.
That's what I needed. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, good. Well, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. One thing that has really impressed me, and I'm the kind of like the first contact with the new members because I collect their money. And I have been so impressed with the vast number of the new folks that have joined us, and I was able to twist three of their arms to make a presentation tonight. So we're going to start off with Adam, who has been doing some really remarkable progress here in the last few months. And I asked him to do it as an inspiration for newbies that come along and say, can I do this? And Adam shows you can. So Adam, can he take the screen and share it?
Yep. So I'm gonna be doing it on my phone because the Wi-Fi is all messed up. I think it's like the rain or something.
Okay.
So it should be fine though. I'm gonna have it in landscape and everything. So share screen. Oh, I gotta change my accessibility settings now to allow it to appear on top. All right. So you can see my screen now?
Yeah, it looks like an iPhone or a phone.
Okay. All right, it'll look regular in a second. So let me. Okay. Sure, okay. PowerPoint. Present. Oh, let's go back. Okay, my astrophotography journey. This is just about me getting started with astrophotography. I started the beginning of 2024 with well, my astrophotography journey really got started when I was 16, when I got my first tabletop Dobsonian. My first scope was a first scope, a Celestron first scope. Is really just good for observing the moon. You can see the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter. So that got me interested. I mean, I was already interested in it, but it definitely was exciting to see, especially Saturn's rings and the moons of Jupiter. When I saw those that was amazing. And I was in a bortle 3 or 4. So I got to see the Milky Way anyway. So just seeing the Milky Way, amazing. I was really interested. I would spend all night outside when I was younger. It was just amazing. And I would take a few photos with my with a phone holder that I bought off of Amazon. So this is the lunar eclipse in January 2019. So this is the first. It was a super moon and like a lunar eclipse at the same time. And that was my first one. It was just amazing. Also that night I got to see a really amazing meteor go right over the top of the moon. And that was the first time I saw a meteor. And then I just did some so this is some of the other photography that I got. So I would just set my phone up on the ground, and this one at the top is Venus and the Pleiades conjunction. I didn't even know it was called the Pleiades at the time. And then I also did a long exposure, and I got like a little meteor in there, and I was hoping it was on my on the photo, and I got in there too. This is a close-up of the Pleiades, and then these are the moons of Jupiter. Not amazing stuff, but I mean, it is amazing. But you know, especially like in Jupiter, you're not going to get much detail out of a 3-inch tabletop Dobsonian for photography. But for observing, it's pretty much will satisfy your curiosity. All right, so now I was like, I gotta be like, all of a sudden, I was driving on the road one day and I saw the moon look kind of weird. And this was like in August or something of 2023. And it turns out it was a lunar eclipse. So I got outside and I was in Bolivar at the time, heading back to Memphis, or a little past Bolivar. And the moon, you know, it disappeared. And I was like, well, I got a lunar eclipse right here. So I stepped outside of my car and the Milky Way was right there. And I was like, I remember when I did this when I was younger. I got to get back into this. So, you know, I spent some time thinking about it. And in December 2023, you know, when all the deals are happening, I bought a Nexstar 8 SE, which is a very popular scope to get if you're a beginner. It is mainly, a lot of it is marketing. You know, bigger is better. But it's really, you can do astrophotography with it, but it's mainly focused on making observing really easy. But what I wanted out of a telescope, and this is why I made the decision with the Celestron Nexstar 8 SE, I wanted to see the rings of Saturn. And in my tabletop Dobsonian, I really couldn't see any detail in the cloud bands on Jupiter. I also want to see the ice caps on Mars and you know, small craters on the moon, which my other scope definitely couldn't resolve. You know, and I saw the photos of what people were doing, but I didn't think I was like, I'm not going to get anything like that. I was just really interested in the planets and the moon. I didn't really know anything about deep sky astrophotography either. So I wanted it computerized because I knew the struggle of trying to go to an object with the Dobsonian. So this particular model I chose because an SET is probably the most cost-effective type of OTA in focal length, aperture, and portability. You can get a Dobsonian for similar price point, but with that you don't have portability. So, and then there's a lot of positive reviews for visual observing, and I didn't see any competitors. I couldn't go with like a Meade telescope or anything like that because with the reviews and the deal that they were having, it was pretty much the Celestron 8-inch SCT was the only one I could go with, and it has 1-day shipping. So when I finally decided, I just clicked the button and it was there the next day. And also I just was looking particularly at Celestron scopes as well because, you know, that was my first scope. So with the Nexstar, so I just spoke a lot of good things about the Nexstar ASE. That doesn't mean go out and buy one. I mean, it's good. It's a good scope, but some of the cons that it has for beginners, if you're trying to do astrophotography, it's like it has like a mount wobble. So some of the when you're pointed at an object, even if you're tracking well, some of the light will land on neighboring pixels. So this isn't like tracking error or anything. It's just the quality of the mount. That's the wobble, but it also really doesn't have very good tracking, and it's an alt azimuth mount, so it's not like you can set up guiding very easily. Now, I do know somebody right now that's trying to do guiding with a wedge, and it's an interesting challenge, and she's getting decent results with it. And if you don't have the wedge, you can't really point the scope at the zenith. So if there's anything right above you, which is the darkest part of the sky, you can't image it unless you're just looking through an eyepiece. But if you have like a camera that is properly backspaced, you're not going to be able to image that unless you have a really small camera. But like with a DSLR, you're not going to be able to see that because it's the nature of the mount. And then also the field is not flat using a full frame camera. There is a field flattener you can get, but even then, it can't flatten out for a full frame camera. So if you are trying to flatten it out for the full frame, there are scopes that can have full frame flattening capabilities, but this is not one. And this is just an example image of one of the quality of the scope. So it is a good scope for lunar, definitely, and also planetary. But for astrophotography, which is what I was also interested in, deep sky objects, I had to find something else. So real quick, these are the things I wish I knew before starting to use the Nexstar ASE, and hopefully, anybody that is starting out with an ASE, they'll know these things. So I wish I knew not to try powering my mount with AA batteries. They really shouldn't even have that as an option because it can confuse a lot of people. They drain after barely even a couple of nights of observing. And if you don't have good, if the batteries aren't charged up, don't have a good charge, then they're not gonna, it's not gonna track or slew well. And you're gonna mess up your 3-point alignment if you're doing that. And then this is just basic telescope stuff. So all telescopes in general, when changing cameras or eyepieces, you can just point the telescope at the moon, Jupiter, or Venus, bright objects like that to achieve focus. And then you can slew to your target. And the closer the star to the center of the eyepiece when you're doing your 3-point alignment, it'll be much more accurate. So take a few extra seconds. If you're using a camera, there's like crosshairs you can have, and you can also just make crosshairs for your own eyepiece. And then one thing I also found out is when I changed the collimation of my ASE after I aligned the telescope, you actually just have to redo your alignment because the pointing model becomes messed up. Because when you change the angle of the mirror, would be pointing at a different point in the sky. So you can collimate, and then you have to redo your 3-point alignment if you're using the hand controller. Now, if you have plate solve, you wouldn't have that issue. And then also the maximum magnification for the telescope that I was using was only 480 times, which is actually quite a lot. But you won't be able to use a 5x Barlow or really even a 3x Barlow. You may get by with it if you're using a smaller eyepiece. But to figure out your magnification, you might not want to use a 5x Barlow with an 8mm eyepiece, but you may be able to use something with like a 32mm eyepiece. I'm not sure. I've never done that before. but you can quickly determine the magnification by dividing the focal length of the telescope by the eyepiece you're having. This is kind of helpful because you can kind of understand better how these eyepieces work. So the higher the focal length, like the more, if 2000 is less than 4000 when you're talking about focal length, but in eyepieces it's the opposite way. So the smaller the number, you're gonna magnify more. And then when you're trying to collimate, this helped me a lot for planetary. Oh, well, this is a finer scope. So yeah, this definitely was, it did help me a lot for planetary. When I got my Nexstar 8SE, the screws were very loose. So you want to make sure that's very tight, so you don't really have to adjust it ever. All right, so deep sky astrophotography with the SE. This photo right here is like a lucky imaging technique I use for the Ring Nebula. But most people cannot get more than 15 seconds, even with the equatorial wedge, simply due to the limitations of the mount itself. But if you get the wedge, it can eliminate field rotation, and it'll teach you more about polar alignment and whatnot. And just to think about the field of view that you can get, if you had a full frame camera, you can get the whole moon in the frame, or if you just have a crop sensor, you can use the reducer. And here's some useful apps and websites that I came across that really helped me out a lot. Astronomytools.com or astronomy.tools. Very helpful in determining what camera you should use for your scope. A lot of information about your scope, like the Dawes limit, and definitely field of view calculators, comparing different fields of views with different scopes, cameras, reducers, and that may help me make a more informed decision about what camera and scope I wanted to buy later. And then also Stellarium, Sky Safari, any kind of app that you can have on your phone that can find stars, very helpful. Astrospheric helps with the weather. That's what I use all the time to look at the weather. Compass, it can be useful if you just want to know where north is. And a polar clock, I use that for polar aligning, visually polar aligning my EQ6R that I have right now. So planetary imaging was the first thing I started with. It's really much more like financially sustainable to get started with planetary imaging than deep sky, because you don't even need tracking actually. Even if your mount didn't track, you can still do planetary. But what I started out with was a PC with 16 gigs of RAM and then 256 of storage. In hindsight, I probably wish I would have got more of all of that, but I just use external storage. And then there's certain programs I can't even run with my 16 gigs of RAM. So the first planetary camera I got was a ASI 224MC, and I was also using a 2X Barlow when I first got started with it. And the software I used was ASI Studio on my computer, PIPP, which is just throws out the bad frames and makes it easier for your stacking program to stack. The stacking program is AutoStacker. That's the one I was using and I still use. And Registax sharpens the images. So AutoStacker, when you do your recording, it'll take each frame and find the best frames and the best parts of the frame, and it will stack them together. And then Registax, you sharpen and color balance. And this is a photo of the camera that I had. So it's not cooled. It's very simple and it's very cheap. I even saw somebody was selling one for $100. So it does have a small sensor though, which is fine for planetary imaging. So here's some quick tips for planetary image capturing. On the right, you'll see some of my progress with Jupiter. So January 28th, you can definitely see the cloud bands on Jupiter. And it's decently collimated. My collimation just got worse because I was trying to collimate my scope at a star, and then I would slew back over to Jupiter, and the mirror would have changed positions, and that was due to the fact that my screws weren't really tight. Even though in one spot of the sky, it looked like it was collimated, I would slew back over to Jupiter. So my solution to that was just tighten the screws all the way, and then loosen each screw just a little bit at a time. And then you get a pretty well collimated scope that I've really never had to collimate ever since, unless I accidentally bump into it or something. So you want to image while you're 30 degrees above the horizon. It's really not even worth your time to try to do something lower in the sky, because the seeing is just would just be horrendous, because there's so much air you're having to look through, so much atmosphere you're having to look through, rather than straight up. When you bring your scope outside, you want to just take it outside about 30 minutes at least before. So you don't want to go out there, try to focus, and then the temperature of the scope changes, and then you end up having to refocus. And then I confirmed the collimation with a star near the planet. And you do that, the collimation, how you determine it is you unfocus your star, something like Sirius. You don't want to use a planet. I learned that the hard way. Planets are just too bright, or they're just too big around. It won't really give you an accurate, because it'll just look like a donut, even if it's not in collimation. So then there's screws on the top of the scope that you're going to turn just a little bit, and you want it to look like a donut, and not you want that middle circle to be a little off to the side. I should have added a picture here to talk about collimation, but and then use a Bahtinov mask to focus with the star. And then for Jupiter, you don't want to record more than 90 seconds. More frames are better, but you're just gonna get some weird results if you try to image with something like 5 minutes with Jupiter, because it rotates so fast. And then Saturn and Mars, you can do 5 minutes. But the focal length and the angular size of the planet can also be taken into account. So if you're closer to opposition, and you have a higher focal length, you might not be able to do 90 seconds to get your best, because you're still going to see a little bit of rotation. So you might drop it down to like 60 or even lower. And then what I just do is I'll just sit out there all night and just, as long as there's not problems with like dew or anything or seeing, I just stay out there as long as I can and get plenty of imaging time, plenty of recordings, and then later I can look at each recording and see which is best. Now, when I load my frames into AutoStacker, so I just will skip PIPP altogether most of the time, unless I need to make all the frames uniform if they're messed up, or they're jumping all over the place. But when you load it into AutoStacker, when you click on Planet Image Stabilization, up here in the corner, it will actually center the planet, and you can click play and it'll center the planet or the object. And then the align points. If there's really no detail on, I don't put any align points there. But if this was a planet, you'd see align points pretty much in the whole area. And like I said, the pixels, the size of the object, that's the alignment points are dependent on that. So if your object is only a few hundred pixels, like if I'm doing Mars, I may only use like 2 align points. It's not going to really do your imaging stacking any favors. It's going to take a really long time if you try to put like 20 align points in like a really tiny Mars. So usually I'll just do like 8 to 50, depending on whatever I'm imaging. And then I just found this out recently. I was having issues with the edge of the planet. So you don't want to put any align points on the edge of the planet because it can just mess up that area. So you want to keep it more towards the center. All right, and then Registacks. I spent a lot of time using I think it was the Gaussian wavelet filter, yes. And it's just a waste of time, in my opinion. I don't know if anybody's actually had good results with it, but I found out just using the default wavelet filter and just sharpening and bringing your sliders over, these little sliders on the left, you're just going to bring them over and it's going to sharpen them really well. It's probably the best sharpening out there. You could also just load your stack into a program like GIMP or Photoshop and sharpen it that way. And I found out that it does just as well. And then another thing that I found out on the way, and this saves me a lot of extra time. When you're trying to focus, when you're doing color balancing, if your processing area, so you can change your processing area in the settings, and then you had to close Registacks and then open it back up. But you want your processing area to be smaller than the planet or the object if you're trying to do a color balance. Because if it has the background in it and the background's like a little red or purple, it's going to take that into account. And it's just going to give you an incorrect color balance. It does, if you're using a smaller processing area, it'll take a little bit longer for the do all function, which you're just going to click the do all function. And it will process the whole image altogether. And then on the right over here, I just use just a few things. So I'll just use RGB balance, and that's pretty much it over here on the right. These little buttons over here, I just do RGB balance and I sharpen it, and I'm good. And I may rotate my image or whatever. All right, so first challenges to deep sky astrophotography. I didn't even know all these challenges that I would have when I got started with it, but they definitely became apparent as I got started with it. So probably the worst part of all of it is where I live. And I basically live in a Bortle 9. And later you'll see some comparison images that I took kind of very recently. I didn't even post it in the Slack, but y'all will see that in a second. And then I have never had a PC before, so just using File Explorer was a very pretty big challenge for me. I never used a DSLR. I remember being so confused why I couldn't take a picture, and it was because I didn't have a lens. But I knew I needed a lens, but I thought I could still, and I was on auto mode. So, and then learning everything about that, that was definitely a challenge. And then the next one is I'm not made of money. So I try to save money anywhere I can. Sometimes you just have to, you can't, you're just going to have to, make that purchase of that mount or that camera. But you can make shortcuts elsewhere. And then I've never used any kind of editing program except on my phone. And then just the learning curve in general. I remember when I first got into astrophotography and I was reading on these online forums, and it just was like a foreign language to me. They were talking about things like quantum efficiency and drizzling and pixel size microns. It just made no sense to me. Now, I mean, it still makes no sense to me, but I can understand what point they're trying to make. And when I read this stuff, I was like, there's no way I'm even going to be able to do any of this deep sky stuff that people are doing. This is just, I wasn't even focused on it. So I was like, there's just no way. But over time, improving my images one step at a time, all of a sudden I am, doing deep sky astrophotography and putting like hours of data in. And then how to combat light pollution. So this is the worst part of astrophotography, besides clouds. Just go to darker skies, pack up your scope, and even driving 30 minutes out of Memphis, you're going to get much better border level. Astro Flats is about an hour away from my house. And here are some comparison images. So I took this 4.5 hours of image data of the Andromeda Galaxy a couple nights ago. And this was in my backyard. You can see almost nothing. I mean, you can see some dust lanes in there, but I did 4.5 hours, and you really can't. I mean, you can see it's a galaxy, but you get nasty gradients, and then this over here is 1.5 hours. Each panel was exposed for 1.5 hours. I mean, it's a mosaic, but each of the pixels was exposed for 1.5 hours. And it is just tremendously better. There's no comparison. The fact that you can just expose less, and in fact, this 4.5 hours, I had a 5-minute frame, or if I stacked 5 minutes of frames, it would still look better than what it does in a Bortle 9, at least without filters. So you can use filters for like narrowband, which I haven't got into yet. Narrowband and then dual band for one-shot color cameras. And then you can get really good astrophotography, like the Ring Nebula, M57, M27, the Dumbbell Nebula, and then Pleiades. No, that's not Pleiades. That's Orion. You can get really good astrophotography, even a Bortle 9 with really bright deep sky objects. And then use a dew shield to block porch and street lights. So I don't have to deal with street lights where I'm at, luckily. But every house has a street light on for some reason. I never understood it, even before I got into astrophotography. So, and then over here on the right is astrospheric. It has a light pollution map that you can kind of look at to see. Oh, it just lets me know every time I look at it that I'm in the worst place possible for astrophotography.
And is the Bortle 4 where is that at?
Oh, no, I'm going back. So the Bortle 4, well, I mean, it might be a Bortle 3, but Astrospheric says a Bortle 4. That's Astroflats.
Oh yeah, well, Steve is measured there with his SQM. Am I wrong, Steve? It was low 3s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've been getting like 3.2
So
with my. I've been measuring it. I'm not finished. This is something you have to do over many nights.
Yeah. Well, either way, in my opinion, with if it was a Bortle 3 or even 5 in my or even maybe 6, but when you're in a Bortle 9, it's just completely gonna destroy anything you're trying to do broadband. It's just terrible. So 1.5 hours in a Bortle 3 according to actual on-site measurements. Okay, so, and this was another thing I had to overcome, which is the cost of this hobby. It's an amazing hobby. I really wouldn't do anything else, but it's probably one of the more expensive ones. So Amazon resale has been a big help for me. I bought an open box equatorial wedge that retails for like $420, and I bought it for 180, I think. Yeah, 180. And it was new. It was just returned, and Amazon doesn't know how to resell their products, so they sell them really cheap. I have a battery that goes for like $180. I got it for like $70. Cables, pretty much anything that you can find. They have like some. If you're lucky, you can find good prices on them. And then use cameras, especially DSLRs. There is really no reason to buy a new DSLR. They cost thousands of dollars. Easily can, $5,000 for a new DSLR nowadays. But there is so many people that are selling their used DSLRs, and they may only have 70 pictures taken on. I bought an ASPC camera, and it had like 24 shots on it, and it was completely new, and I got it for like a huge deal on I think it was B&H Photo or MPB. And then Cloudy Nights has some good deals for mounts. And then somebody mentioned something called Astro Market or something like that. And then the heaviest discounts are offered at the end of the year. And also, if there's an eclipse, I've noticed that there will be a lot of deals on equipment before and after. And then sell your equipment you no longer use. Sometimes you will find yourself buying equipment that really doesn't suit what you're trying to do, if it's astrophotography. And you can just, I've found myself just getting rid of stuff that I don't use anymore because I thought it would be a good purchase. And then also Memphis Astronomical Society members selling or even offering services like 3D printing. I know there's a few people that have 3D printers, and I've had gotten bat dog masks and cable clips from them, and it's definitely very nice because they'll charge you like $20 for a piece of plastic on Amazon, and then I used free software to start out with. I don't think there's any software that I paid for, and I am going to fall down that hole of buying software. But for right now, it is interesting to with the what you can do with free software. So it's not a requirement to spend hundreds of dollars on software to get started. Some editing tips to edit your images. You want to use a non-destructive editing program. So don't use something on your phone because it's just going to destroy all the data. So you want to use something non-destructive like Photoshop or GIMP. And then also, I wish I would have known this earlier. I would spend hours trying to stretch something because I didn't really know how to. When you do it in levels, you just click on the levels tab and you take the middle slider and you move it over to the left to brighten the image. And then you take the slider on the left and you move it over to the middle to darken or lower the black point. And then less is more. So if you find yourself using contrast, it can just destroy your image. Like it'll blow out the stars. And then if you set the black point too low, there's just so much data and dust in the darker areas that will just go away. You won't be able to see it because it's black, even though you think space is black. So I did this too. I'm guilty of it. You think space is black, so you want to make the background black. That seems like the sensible thing to do. But instead, we're doing, taking hours of imaging data just to make everything black except to the stars. Well, you don't want to do that. You can do an auto stretch, and it does pretty well instead of trying to manually set the black point too low. And then auto white balance function is really helpful, especially with using an RGGB sensor. So it has more green pixels than anything else. So most of the images will look a little green. This image behind the text isn't even white balanced, so I don't think it is, because I really wasn't very experienced in editing at the time. Some more tips on how to advance your astrophotography fast. Just take your telescope outside as much as you can, and it's not a chore, because every time you take your telescope out, it's really fun. At least for me. So I'd never regret taking my telescope out, even on cloudy days, cloudy nights. If I get every night you go outside, you're gonna learn something. Even if you spend 8 hours outside at night and you don't get anything usable, you still learn something, and that's gonna help you out the next time you go out. You might spend hours trying to capture one planet, and then the next time you may only spend a few minutes on it because of what you learned before. And then another thing that's helped me out a lot is to save the stacked file later to re-get it as you learn new techniques. And that's is interesting because it shows that the data was good that I was capturing mostly. It's just learning those new techniques and editing that you can. So just keep the files, keep the stacked files, and then later you can go back to it and just create amazing images. So now I'm into astrophotography. I'm in the bottomless pit, and I want to buy a wider field scope. And I saw a lot of people using ED127s. But if I bought an ED127, I would want to buy something a little bit wider to get some more wide field target. So I ended up going with 500 millimeters, where this one's 490 millimeters. And for any beginner out there, I can comfortably, or anybody that wants to get a new scope, I can comfortably recommend the ASCAR 71F. It's only $599 as a quadruplet, and completely flat field, all the way to a full frame. I put my full frame camera on there, and it's just round stars throughout. So while you can backspace things properly, that is a headache to me when you have to change when you go to different cameras and everything. So, and a lot of like my A-to-C, it had the corrector, but it was in no way flat all the way out to a full frame, or even an ASPC. It just really smaller sensors, like a 533 or something, or 183 is what the A-to-C is good with. And then I've not seen any kind of like weird color fringing or anything with my scope. I haven't looked at it visually before, but it probably would be just fine. But it's really like an astrograph, I'm pretty sure. So the affordability is nice. Like I said, $599, and you don't have to buy a separate field flattener. So you're gonna put the money into the scope, and you're really never gonna you're not going to need to buy a flattener. You can buy a reducer. There's one about to come out. Similar scopes like this, thousands of dollars that I was looking at. I think some quadruplets or flat field scopes, they were costing like $1,500. So the cons, and it also had a built-in rotator. So that's nice, just to rotate without having to mess with anything. I don't know if that's common for scopes, but my A-to-C definitely didn't have it. And then I don't have any complaints so far with this scope. I mean, This is my first like real deep sky imaging scope, and I don't have any complaints on it so far. Now I had to choose my mount. I was going all in with astrophotography, and I wanted something that I was going to keep for the foreseeable future. So while I could buy, a mount with a capacity of like 20 pounds for this ASCAR 71F that I wanted to buy, I wanted something that was a little bit more versatile. So versatility is definitely a strength of the EQ6R. It has a Lost Mandy and Vixen mounting options, and it can support up to 44 pounds. But for deep sky, you may only want to go up to like 20 pounds. But it's more than enough to hold my 8-inch SCT. And then it's tried and true. So you really don't hear much bad things about it. And it serves people really well. Low periodic error is another thing that I saw when looking at the reviews. I'm not sure what periodic error is. I know it's bad for tracking. I think it has to do with the gears. See, there's still stuff I don't know, but it has to do something with the gears doing something, in case anybody wants to explain it. Now it's an equatorial design, which if you're doing astrophotography, you must have an equatorial. So that was what was different between my A to C mount, Nexstar A to C mount. And then the cons are it's really heavy. It doesn't bother me as much anymore, but when I first got started with it, I felt like this would discourage me from using my telescope as often. But I'm just so used to it now. I just lug it out there and drop it on the tripod. And then stiction. Apparently this mount, if you've had it for a few years, I think it has to do with the oils inside. They, after using it quite a bit, like they burn up and they just mess with your tracking. All right, and now I had to choose my camera, which is it's a big part of it's not as big as your mount. Your mount, like somebody said this before, or maybe I said it. You like in regular photography, they say marry your body and date your lens. I don't know how much that is true, or no. Yeah, date your body and marry your lens. Your lens is more important than your body. But in astrophotography, the lens or the telescope is what you want to date. If you spend $600 or whatever, even lower, on a scope, and it turns out not to be that great, you can get a new scope. But with a mount, you want to make sure it's good, and anything you would want to do with it, you want to make sure it can handle that. And I could see me owning this for decades because I know other people have. So now the camera, on the other hand, there's a little bit more wiggle room in it. You could probably buy a camera that isn't as good as what other people are using and produce amazing results with it. Some people, even in this like group, or not like the astrophotography group, like Ethan, he's using a DSLR and he does way better astrophotography, deep sky astrophotography, than I ever did, and I have a cool camera. So the cooling capability of this camera, that was definitely something I wanted to look for. So that checked that box. The quantum efficiency of this camera was 84%, and if I understand correctly, quantum efficiency is the rating of how many photons are converted to electrons when it hits the pixel.
That's right.
So yeah, okay. And then so like a D610. So I had a full frame D610, came out like more than 10 years ago. And around that time, apparently they did a lot of improvement in camera sensor technology. Now it's kind of plateaued out. So you could probably buy a camera right now and it'll probably be good for a long time. But a sensor that you might have bought like 10 years ago, it may be obsolete now. Like the D610, it was really good. It's still good for a lot of stuff, but I want to maximize I want to get as much out of my imaging time as possible. So with the D610, I was getting 50% of my photons were converted to electrons, which is imaging data. And then 84%, which is a big jump with the current camera I have right now. And then extremely low read noise. The D610 had a really low read noise too, especially for its time. But the lower your read noise, the more signal you get. The more signal, the better your image is going to look. And it was pretty high resolution, and that kind of was what attracted me. Now I understand that it's not that important because there are other things you can do, like drizzling and just using. Now I just have to make sure I have really good guiding because I'm really well sampled. So if my guiding is what other people would say, oh, that's pretty good. Well, since I have really small pixels, sometimes it's like 2.4. So it's not generally a deep sky camera unless you have low focal lengths like 300, 400, 500. And then the cons is it was a small sensor size. So it's bigger than the 224, the ASI 224. But that's just part of it. I got this camera. It was a deal, so I got it. I think it was like $599. So that was a really good deal on it, and I still love the camera. So it's just a small sensor size. If I had the money, I would have bought an ASBC or even a full frame, since my scope has full frame capability. It would have been amazing. Now I had to choose my planetary and guide cam for my current setup. So I chose the QHY 5 version 3 715C. So here's some things that attracted me to it. So it was small pixels, which is really good for guiding and lucky imaging. So if you wanted to do lucky imaging for planetary or lunar, you can negate the need for a Barlow. I have yet to use this camera with a Barlow. I don't even know if it will even do well with it, because I would be at like the diffraction limit of my scope. And I don't know if it'll just make the image bigger instead of giving more detail. So I'll have to try that out soon. The smaller pixels, you can get a smaller guide scope. So if this one was like $179, the guide scope. So if I bought, if I just use my ASI 224, I would have to buy a bigger guide scope, and the guide scopes even can get kind of pricey. So small guide scope, small pixels, and it all works out. And another challenge I had with the guide scope and the guide camera is you had to buy an extension tube, or you can just take the lens out of your Barlow. That's what I did. I took the lens out of my Barlow and just used that as the extension tube. I remember Brent helping me get guiding set up, and that's definitely been a game changer. Now I see it. Anything that you're not guiding, you're just wasting your time. That's how I see it now. I mean, just because my mount doesn't do 10-minute exposures, unguided, and it also allows you to do dithering, and you can eliminate walking noise. And then the very high quantum efficiency. It doesn't really matter as much with planetary and lunar. Well, yeah, it kind of does, because the more light you can get, the lower you can put your exposure down. From what I've seen, the the quantum efficiency of this camera is like off the charts. Like it's like 94% or something. So I don't know of any camera that has higher than that. But it's really good. So even though it's small pixels, the light it does collect. It's converted to electrons very well. And then it also has a 512 megabyte buffer, so you can get fast frame rates when you're doing planetary. And then my guide scope I used, and all this I decided with astronomy.tools. You can determine what guide scope and gag camera you need for your current setup. Now, this is the PC software I use for astrophotography. I use, this is pretty much all the things I can think of. Grexpert, which fixes gradients and also does a little bit of denoising. But it takes forever on my computer. Like it can easily take me 30 minutes, an hour just to do one 20 megapixel, just because of the computer I have. You could also use something like, I think it's called NoiseX. But I'm just doing free software. So this is all free software that I use. This is just to give you an insight to what I use. Deep Sky Stacker, it stacks your images. Just Deep Sky. Auto Stacker, you're going to use that for planets. GIMP, it's like Photoshop, but it doesn't cost anything. NINA stands for Nighttime Imaging and Astronomy. And, it's your go-to program for deep sky imaging and planning programs. PhD 2, it's great and easy with guiding, so you can get longer exposures. SharpCap, I use that for planetary and lunar image capturing. PIPP, I use that for making animations and preparing any files I have for AutoStacker. Registax, I use that for sharpening, color balancing my planets. ASCOM is just like, it's just software you need to download so all your software can communicate with each other and your mount and whatnot. And PlateSolve 3, as I was told, it was a game changer. You're not stuck like looking around for an object. Just hit PlateSolve and it'll center it perfectly, and it's just amazing. Stellarium, I have that on my computer. Anything that NINA can't find itself with its built-in sky maps, it just connect Stellarium with NINA, and you pretty much have every object you can ever want to look in the sky. And then StarNet, I just use it for mostly at the moment cosmetic purposes, just to see what the dust looks like, because I'm not that skilled at editing, but I'm getting there. All right, and then in conclusion, take it one step at a time and keep improving. I never really wanted or thought I could ever do what some of the people were putting out. I just kind of was like, oh, that's cool. I had a desire for it, but I didn't think I would ever be able to do that, so I didn't even try to think about it. But if you just take it one step at a time, if you can do a 3-second exposure of the Orion Nebula like I did in the Portal 9, if you can do an exposure, if you can operate a camera, then you can slowly work your way. Each image that you do is just going to get better and better. You're going to learn more and more. And so this is February 2024. This is like my first deep sky image that I took. A 4-second exposure on an Alt-Az. No, this was a EQ wedge on the as. And then fast forward 5 months, and I'm putting like 4 hours into like each one that I do. And that's a wrap. Any questions, comments?
Amazingly fast time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great.
You're a quick learner.
Yeah, I wanted people to see how fast he's learned, because I mean, it's just inspiration for all the new folks out there.
Yeah, I'm a lazy learner.
Any other questions for Adam?
Yeah, I kind
wait
of
till you-
this is my thing. Like I hyperfixate on it. Any free time I have, I'm well, if it's not cloudy, or if it is cloudy, I'll be editing or learning new things. I still have plenty to learn. Definitely, I've learned a lot from this astrophotography group. It's inspired me to do a lot of things that I didn't think were in my like a realm of possibilities. Like I didn't know I would be able to do something like that. But then when I see an image that somebody does, I'm just like, oh, maybe I can do that.
Mhm.
And it just turns out looking terrible. And then I try it again, and it looks a little better. And a lot of people have seen the images that I was, posting to the group. If you compare them to what I'm doing now, like you saw with my Jupiter comparison images, you can see the cloud bands, but you can't see the red spot, even though it was there. You can kind of see a little red. So each image that you do, the time you spend is just going to get better and better, and you just have to keep at it. And I still have a long way to go.
Thanks, Adam. It was
Don't we all?
Yeah.
great
Yes, thank you.
presentation. Yeah, you never stop learning.
Yeah, wait till you level up and get over the 16 to 20 hour mark. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Next one, Cindy and Avery were at the Astroplatz, a month or so ago, and she did some kind of a neat work there that's time lapse, and I thought it would be a kind of a quick presentation, show her stuff off, and so Cindy, you're up.
Okay,
Yeah, share.
let's see here. Where is it? Let's see if it'll work.
There you go.
What are y'all seeing? I'm not very good with
Okay,
this.
that one.
You're good.
It's like a
I'm good.
PowerPoint.
Yeah,
PowerPoint ready to
is that
start.
the green thing right there? No, hold on.
That,
That's showing what you're sharing.
okay. Okay, sorry, this is the first time I've ever done this, so
You're
we're
fine.
gonna start the slideshow. And here's my this would be the first picture I've ever taken of the moon.
It's sharing this.
That's fine. And this was taken back in 2014 with a Coolpix camera.
Okay.
And we had just moved back from New England, and I was we lived up near Shelby Forest. So that was the very first one, and I knew that I wanted to be able to do this. So I love time-lapse photography. So first thing you need to do is you need to pick your subject. And next week we've got a partial lunar eclipse and the full moon. And then on October 2nd, we have the new moon. You can always do sunrises, sunsets, Milky Way, and the aurora. And this picture would be of the 2024 solar eclipse from Cape Girardeau, not Cape Girardeau, from, where did we go?
That was New Madrid.
New Madrid, Missouri is where we went. So that's this picture. For the equipment I use an Insta360 Go 3S. It is actually a brand new camera. It came out in April of this year. And I use its invisible tripod to go with it. And then I also use the my Nikon 3400 DSLR with an 8mm fisheye lens, a Zomi tripod, and then the Anchor battery will charge both of my Nikon, as well as I can plug it straight into the Insta360, and it will go for 24 hours. Then you need a dew heater for the actual DSLR and an intervalometer. And then you can also use optional neutral density filters. I haven't used them, but I've got them on order. So we're going to see what they do. Okay, then you have to pick your location and pretty much the dark skies, darker the better, and further away from the cities and light pollution. Pretty much Astro Flats is great. It's half an hour from our house. Then Shelby Forest was great. We lived up there before we moved out here, and that was pretty dark sky. Then we've been to Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and we did the sunset at Cleveland's Dome, and that was really nice, and it got very dark very quickly. And the one dark sky park on the National Registry that I know of in Tennessee is the Pickett CCC Memorial State Park. It's up just it. Settings I use are the ultra wide angle with a shutter speed of 30 seconds, an ISO of 400, and a white balance set to auto. I did this for 2.5 hours and I got about a 10-second video. And then when I went to Astro Flats, it was a little longer. I'll show you all the video in just a couple of minutes. After you film it, you need to remember that 10 seconds is 250 to 300 photos. And this camera has a 3-second buffer. That's the lowest buffer I've got on it. So I have one picture every 3 seconds, and I have a 30-second exposure time. To get a 30-second time lapse, you'd need to have 7 or 8 hours of photos at night. During the day, obviously shorter exposure time, so you'll either have a longer video or shorter session. For my software, you can use Adobe Premium Pro. I've dabbled in it a little, but not that much. OpenShot, I'd love to get photo pills. Then we have Deep Star Stacker, and then my Insta Studio desktop editing software. The Insta360 software actually comes with the camera, so you can get that, and it goes on your smartphone as well as on your desktop. So after that, you download all of them. This picture right here is actually from my sister-in-law from the 2017 solar eclipse, excuse me. So I upload the photos to my phone in the app, and it can take up to 1,000 photos for a star lapse. But anything over 1,000, you're going to need to take it straight to your computer. And I use OpenShot video editor, and I'm able to splice them together, and then run it through my Pixel or the Insta360 to get the star lapse. And here are a couple of examples. There we go. It's not working very much. Hold on just a second, sorry. I'm trying to get back to my main screen. Let me. Hold on just a second, sorry.
No worries, Cindy. Take your time.
No, that's sure fine.
Wow.
You want your file browser or your
On my main screen, I have them all saved onto the
Okay.
screen.
on your desktop?
Yes, on the
Okay.
desktop.
Yeah, it's behind there. Is that it's just going to be up in
Yep,
Okay.
it's
What's
not happy. Give me my file manager.
yeah, we can look at it desktop from file manager. So hit that
Yeah.
guy. There you go. Just desktop right up in the upper. Oh, there it goes.
Okay, here is one of my first one. Here is my star lapse from,
And it put it on.
and it put it on the wrong screen. Well, that's not going to be fun, is it? So it says I'm sharing it.
Try zooming it. Drag it. There you go.
Okay.
And lower left. Maybe.
And this is a star lap from a house.
Great.
It's very, very short. And then here is,
You didn't drag.
well, hold on. Sorry, guys. Here is that was the star trails, and this is just the star laps. As you can tell, we've got a lot of people driving in and out. And here is the time lapse.
That's interesting.
Okay, here is the, let me start that over. This was in Astro Flats. This is the star trail that I got from the night that we went out there. A whole lot darker than around here. And the final one, if it will actually open,
It's actually open. That's good.
straight down the middle, you can see the Milky Way with all of the different clouds. I pretty much use exclusively my DSLR and this camera, which is my Insta360 Go S3. Does anyone have any questions?
That was cool.
That was some good stuff.
Have you
Still
ever
learning?
pointed?
And this will be my third action camera. I was able to kill a Nikon and a GoPro, so I'm hoping I don't kill this one. And then it is a small DSLR. It's 3400, but I've got some pretty good lenses, and I've got a very stable tripod for both. And with being able to go out to Astro Flats, I hope I just keep getting better and better.
Cool. Well, thank
Have you pointed your camera at Polaris yet?
No, I have not.
The North Star. You'll get like circular star trails.
Around pretty much here. I think we are in a Bortle 4 here, but
Our neighbors ruin it.
yeah, but our neighbors have kids, and then the other side is afraid of the dark. So so we have all kinds of lights out here. So I'm very glad we could go to Astro Flats now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Cindy, I noticed how quickly you set up. That's what I liked about your rig. It's a cool looking camera, first of all.
Thank you.
I saw you set that thing up, and you guys come and you just oh, okay, you're taking images.
Well, pretty much I've had larger setups, and I'm kind of scaling back because we go camping, and I'd like to go up to the Badlands. I'd like to go out to Grand Canyon. I want to go to all these places, and I'm not going to be able to take, 50 pounds worth of equipment.
There you
So
go.
I'm trying to find a small camera. This one also, it stays warm enough that you do not have to have the heater. The
Right.
camera heater, the lens heater, you don't have to have it because this camera will stay warm enough without it.
Mhm.
And things like that. I was just looking for something very small, but that will do what I want it to do.
Mhm. Excellent.
Cool. Anything else? All right, we got our next presenter is another one of the new newbies, or at least in our group anyway. And Ethan's kind of a star that is going to show us what he did for the Stellar View monthly newsletter. So you're up.
All right, I'm up. Can y'all hear me fine?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I feel a little less prepared. I probably should have put all my stuff into a PowerPoint or slideshow, but I'm just going to read from the actual.
We're easy.
Let's see. All right. So I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Stellar View and their line of telescopes, but they are a premium refractor manufacturer here, located here in the U.S. There's only kind of a handful of premium refractor makers worldwide. And with most of them, you're paying quite a heavy premium or quite a long wait to get a telescope. Whereas Stellar View, they've got a lot nicer price point compared to the other market, and they typically have scopes on hand and ready to ship without any kind of waiting period. So that is pretty nice. It's also nice. You can pick up the phone and talk to Vic, the owner and founder of Stellar View, or talk to other people there at the shop. It's a small crew, real family oriented almost type of work group. So they're a great crew, and it's been nice to be able to get to know some of the people there behind the scope, and knowing that it's well supported if I were to ever have an issue down the road. But I've gotten to know them, and they've gotten to see some of my images through my Instagram profile, which you can follow me on Instagram at Roll Astro. And I have a link at the bottom of here that y'all will see. But they had an eclipse.
Can you post that in the Slack channel, please?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
They had a eclipse contest for owners of Stellar View telescopes, and so I entered that. Fortunately, I didn't win, but they did reach out to me, and they provided some free services on my telescope, because my telescope is a used telescope that I bought off of Cloudy Nights that I got for a really good deal. I probably wouldn't be able to afford a Stellar View just yet if it wasn't for buying used, but so I do recommend to anyone that's starting, like Adam said, check out the used market. You can find some really good deals on a lot of things, and you don't necessarily need to go premium, but it was a goal of mine was to eventually try to get the best gear I could afford. With that, we'll kind of dive into this little newsletter and some of the questions that they asked of me, and I'll try not to just read it word for word, and we'll see. So each month, Stellar View does a newsletter, and they pick a person, and this was August that I was selected for. Here's a photo of me here in my room, just next to my telescope and my mount and everything. There's also this cool paper airplane model that I had gotten from Goodwill. I came across. It was made, I think, 30 years ago or so, and I put it together not too long ago. But ever since I was a kid, I've had an interest in the night sky. I've always been mesmerized by the stars, planets, pretty much anything, and then also aircraft, the shuttle, everything. And when I was young, my parents had gotten me a small Newtonian. I want to say it was probably a 4.5, maybe a 5-inch Newtonian. And I never really got to know how to use it. I wish I had, because I probably still would have had it, and I would have a whole lot more years of experience under my belt. But one of the most memorable things I remember is one time when me and my father had set it up in the backyard back home in Louisiana, where I grew up. And we pointed just at what we thought was a bright star, and it turned out to be Saturn. And so it was pretty awesome to be able to see the rings, and just to be visually to be able to see that, something I didn't know was necessarily possible at that time. So skip forward about 20 years or so. I live about 2 hours south of Memphis. However, I work here in Memphis and spend most of my time up here. And lately with my job, most of my imaging is now being done up here. But when I first got started, I had the fortunate benefit of being fairly rural Mississippi, in Bortle 4, probably neighboring Bortle 3 skies. I basically had a DSLR that I bought from my brother years ago, and I bought it with the intention of using it to take family photos of my kids and stuff. But with the rapid improvements of cell phones, I just never really used the DSLR, and it sat in my closet for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And one night while sitting up late on the porch one night, just staring at the stars, I decided, hey, let me go grab that camera and just see what I can get. And I just started taking photos, just randomly, different exposures, not really having any camera experience or photography experience, or even knowing what to do after the fact. But those simple photos that were anywhere from 5 to 20 seconds long, completely untracked on just a tripod, really sparked my interest. And it wasn't too long after that that I decided to go ahead and let's get a star tracker and a doublet, just a cheap refractor that had some kind of rack and pinion style or Crafer style focus, or something that was easier to deal with than camera lenses. Something just, ideally meant for astro imaging. And I had gotten a Astrotech 60 millimeter doublet. And then the star tracker, I believe, was an Ioptron, one of their star trackers. And it was great. I was able to basically started learning everything. And that was about 2 years ago. And kind of like Adam, just pointing every opportunity I had, I was just taking my telescope out on a little photo tripod and the star tracker, getting everything lined up and finding something in the night sky and just shooting it for usually what would be just one night or until my batteries died. And so it wasn't too long into it that I started going, okay, I'm ready to start upgrading things. And one of the first things I did was actually started trying to automate my imaging. Now with a star tracker, that's a little bit limited. You don't have go-to functionality and other things like that. They also can only dither in your right ascension. They can't dither in your deck because typically they don't track in deck. But that didn't stop me. and I still got a lot of benefit out of it because it did allow me to begin tracking, which allowed me to do longer exposures. It also allowed me to incorporate dithering. Of course, it was only in the one axis, but that still, made a huge improvement in my images, especially coming from my DSLR. And I kind of skipped over one thing. One of the first things I actually did before I think I even ordered the doublet was I modified my DSLR. It's an old Canon T4i. I was never going to use it for anything other than if I started using it for this hobby. And I didn't want to spend the money at the time sending it off to get modified. So there's a lot of resources online. YouTube is your best friend. If you want to learn anything, get on YouTube. You can find, I was able to actually find a guy, Gary Honus, I believe is his name. And I found a video of him modifying my exact camera and basically just followed along. It's not perfect. I've still got a little bit of sensor tilt. I've tried correcting it once, but without using actual measurement tools or anything like that, I don't think I'm going to get it any closer. But it's been good enough for me. So after a while and kind of getting the basics done with my star tracker, I was on cloudy nights and came across a Stellar View 80 millimeter triplet, and I think it was listed for like $650. It had a bunch of spotting on the lenses. The coatings weren't in great shape. It had been abused, but it was within my price range. I knew it was from a good manufacturer, and I had hoped that the defects it had would be outweighed by all the other positive qualities that the scope offered. And it has. In fact, the issues with the lens coatings were never a problem, and have since been corrected by Stellar View. The focuser is very beefy. Don't have any issues with that. The biggest problem was when I bought this scope, my star tracker was no longer able to support it. I think that star tracker had maybe a 10-pound or so weight limit, and I knew with my current setup, I was already approaching that and could sometimes get a little bit of slippage in the clutch on that star tracker. So at the same time, I went ahead and purchased the AM3 harmonic mount from ZWO. and I've loved it so far. I don't think it's the best mount, uh, but I'm running it at nearly its weight limit without a counterweight. I bought the harmonic mount and went with that route due to the fact that it didn't need a counterweight. I wanted something that was more portable. At the time, I was setting up every night, and back then, when I was only imaging from back home, not while I was in Memphis, it just made it a lot more difficult. So, and then also the fact that now that I've started automating and using Nina to do my imaging sessions, I did want to be able to control it and have the go-to functionality. So the AM3 seemed to fit my price point. I knew I could probably go with an EQ6R on the used market for a little bit less. But once again, I was really kind of looking towards that portability, and so far I've gotten that. However, that's all going to change again now that I'm currently in the process of building an 8-inch Newtonian reflector, and I'm hoping to have my Stellar View piggyback on it. So I'm going to have to upgrade my mount to have a little more capacity than what this AM3 has. But so far, it's been doing good. Let's see, kind of get back on topic with the actual interview. Let's see. Well, we can start with some images that I've taken with my SV. So this was taken from back home, and let's see. Can't see when that zoom thing pops up. I don't know why it keeps pulling me to. I'm double duty right now, and I'm on call for work. I don't know why that keeps sending me to this. I don't know. I don't. Can y'all see these images fairly clearly? I guess.
Yep.
Okay. So this was an image of M78. I don't recall the exact time I had on it, but this was done from Bortle 4 with my DSLR AM3 and my Stellar View. Here was a full moon that I captured, as well as with an airplane transit. This was done with a 2x Barlow and the 80mm refractor. And if you're on the Slack channel, a lot of my lunar stuff is all done with a 2x Barlow and this 80mm refractor. This is probably my largest project to date. It was M33. It was actually my first major project when I first got the scope. I think it's just over 30 hours worth of dual narrowband data. Wish I had Are y'all able to see this new page I pulled up, or are y'all still seeing the same thing?
Triangulum Galaxy.
No, okay, so yeah, it keeps pulling me to that. I don't know why it even is going to that. Unfortunately, I have limited disk space on my laptop, so most of my images after they get processed get moved to an external hard drive that I don't have plugged in right now. But
this is less.
All right.
The Adobe on your work laptop, it's just wanting you to log in. It's inside the firewall, so just log in,
okay.
and then the Adobe will open like
Well,
this.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, I've got the same issue. I understand.
We're going to try to get your password here.
Yeah, click that eyeball when you're done typing.
Get your phone.
He wasn't born yesterday, John.
I was.
Go.
That's really cool, M78.
Yeah, great shot.
I'll pull up my Instagram. That way I can kind of give you all a little more details as well as we go through some of the images.
When did you take that photo or
This
image?
was done, let's see. This was done back in February of this year.
Oh, okay.
February of this year, it was 4.2 hours with no filter and 404 with my DSLR. All my processing, all my stacking is done in serial. I too, much like Adam, I started with trying to use as much free stuff as I can. I would definitely recommend to new people to this hobby. You don't necessarily need to buy the premium software like PixInsight and other things to get started. It's, not having those software is definitely not a hindrance. Your telescope and mount and other things are much more of a hindrance and important in my opinion. However, your processing skills and how you go about processing it is hugely important and can make a world of a difference in what an image will turn out as well. So it's kind of a multi thing. Let's see. Go back. And with this was actually just a single image. Although I did take a bunch of images to stack for the moon image, I really didn't know how at the time to stack them all and then also best incorporate the airplane from the one sub that had it in it. And so I decided just to edit that one sub. And I felt like it turned out well enough.
Yeah, that's an impressive shot for just a single exposure.
Shot.
And with this, I don't tend to do any stuff with Registax, or I have used WaveSharp a little bit, but I tend to just do all my editing and sharpening all within Photoshop. With my job, thankfully, I have access to Photoshop and I'm able to install it on my personal computer as well. So that was one benefit, being able to have access to that. However, I believe Adam uses GIMP, which is essentially Photoshop, but it's free.
Photoshop is still a lot better. There's so many things that I can't even do, like as I understand, mosaics and
yeah. So
HDR.
Photoshop has a pretty good photo merge tool. I've only used it a few times. I'm hoping to do my first major mosaic project of the Heart and Soul Nebula once that starts rising a little better. However, my test images from my current location here in South Haven, basically pointing directly into the Memphis light dome as it's rising, have not been very promising. So I'm not sure if I even want to attempt it. I might hold off and wait and do this maybe going out to Astro Flats for when I can image from home. But so this is a M33. I'll zoom in a bit because it's quite a wide field with that 80 millimeter. But I was able to pull out a lot of the nebula and hydrogen alpha emission stuff. I used a process called what's it called now? Let's see, I'm pulling up the data on it as well.
You should throw some O3 on that as well.
Yeah, I have the O3 data, but my camera and O3 just don't play well. It seems like it's always just very, very weak. Even in, I mean, I haven't imaged anything with strong O3, although O3 isn't all that strong compared to HA. That is something I do want to do eventually, is if I can ever gather more data, is to also do a HA O3 RGB combination. But the way I added the HA to this image was using a process called continuum subtraction. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that technique. I don't really understand it enough to really explain it to anybody other than you are taking your hydrogen alpha data and then you're also taking your broadband red data from your red channel, and you're essentially trying to isolate what is the true hydrogen alpha signal.
Right.
And it's a pretty good way of adding, especially for galaxies. I don't know if it's any use for deep sky, but for galaxies, it's a good way to add the hydrogen alpha into the galaxy and have it stick out and pop out significantly more than if I just had stacked this all together on its own.
Yeah, you got to look at your sensor data and how much it captures your red, green, and blue on the graphs part, and then so when you put a like a dual band filter on, mainly for color cameras, that you'll see how much hydrogen alpha it'll take, but then at the very bottom you'll see in that range that you're also picking up normal red colors as well. And then there's a little bit of part of that, so the continuum subtraction takes that little bitty piece and subtracts it away from the data. So you end up trying to get more of the pure high, H alpha, or even with the O3 and the S2 data, anything, you're trying to isolate, you got red, green, and blue in there, and it's got to get that other stuff taken out to give you more of a pure.
Exactly. So for this one, it was 17 hours with my NBZ, my IDAS NBZ filter, and 18.55 hours with a UV IR. So total combined was a bit over 30 something hours.
Well, that much data helps.
Yep. One thing I have noticed though with my DSLR, and I don't know if this is a common thing for one-shot color or if this is just my old DSLR that's showing some age. As I get to projects that are approaching, I don't know, 18, 20 hours or more, I start to almost build noise as much as I start building my signal at that point. And I start getting my artifacts, and I've even seen where like I get a bunch of square patterns due to the Bayer algorithm starts to appear, and other things like that that kind of ruin it. So lately I've been trying to limit my projects and not do anything major, because at least from my past experience with my camera, it doesn't fare well with a ton of data. It tends to start showing more issues. And I mean, I don't know if that truly is the camera. It may be some aspect or some issue, with the way I'm going about processing or other things like that, and just my inexperience at this point. So
you might want to put the data in the Slack or the drive or whatever, and other people can look at it.
Yeah, try that.
Yeah, if you look at my background, I just changed. This is only 7 hours of the M33, and that's only with 1 hour of my dual narrowband filter with the HA and O3. And you'll see a lot of blue in there. That's a lot of the O3 that is in this galaxy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that then.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot. I was surprised with only just an hour's worth of data that it threw in there. It's like, wow, I popped out the blue and it's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
You might already have
you
the
can barely
data.
see the red.
Yeah,
You can barely see the red in it. But I need to go back to this one and put in like 10 hours on the filter, bring out the HA with it as well. But the O3 came out pretty good.
All right. So as a relatively newcomer to the hobby, I find joy in imaging pretty much anything I can point at. I know eventually once I get a monochrome set up, I would like to spend more of my efforts towards imaging things that either have never been imaged before or discovery type stuff. Some works by like John Talbot, Bray Falls, Peter Goodhue, Marcel Dressler, Xavier Strautner, Jan Santee. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with any of these people, but Um, they all do and work a lot in photographing new things that have never been photographed before. And it's just amazing work. And it's not something I would have thought, there's starting off in this hobby, I didn't think I could ever take pictures like I do now. But, I definitely never thought we could still be discovering new things. But then again, if you consider how vast space is, of course, we're going to continue to find new things. So let's see. As far as some of my favorite images were my lunar eclipse images. So I traveled to Newport, Arkansas for the eclipse. I took my whole setup basically. I used a program called Set and See to automate it and to basically create a full photo or capture routine to follow. And it was using my computer and everything, and it basically tracked it based on my exact location and attitude and all that. Was set up to start taking images automatically at the right time. I also was able to get one of my photos published in the BBC Sky at Night for the June issue. It's basically the same photo that was just shown there, but it was a slightly different version that had the black moon. These are definitely some of the hardest things to edit, were the eclipse photos, and figuring out a way to stack all the images. This was captured with a bracket all the way from, I had, was it 15, I think, exposures, all at ISO 100, starting at 1/4000th of a second, all the way up to, I think I went up to 4 seconds or so, or 2 seconds. And so figuring out a way to combine all that data, because with an eclipse, the levels of brightness vary so drastically. And especially with the outer corona, all this stuff on the outer edge, it's just so faint that it gets blown. It's easy to blow it out when, depending on your exposure setting and vice versa. Or really, it's the other way. You can't see a lot of this until you increase your exposure, but then you start blowing out everything around it. So it just makes it a very difficult process to edit these types of photos.
Well, that's a great shot. You actually see the moon.
Yeah, so I took for this edit, I did take some of the longer exposures and blended that in, so we got a little bit of that earth shine.
Right.
And that was a difficult, and I'm still not 100% happy with this. I still got a little bit of glowing around the moon that I never really liked. But after spending, I don't know, probably over 20 something hours in editing for these photos, I think I just said this is good enough. Here's another composite image. This was just taking some of the images straight from the camera and aligning them all together. And this was really simple to make, these composites, but because I got lazy and I didn't want to do all this erasing so that you didn't have all this overlapping, but I kind of liked the pattern it created. But these are real cool, showing the Bailey's beads and as the eclipse approached totality. Let's see. A lot of these questions are they're just kind of to get to know me, some of my interest in the hobby. They asked if I had any particular telescopes, or am I tied to a single telescope or anything like that. And me personally, I think I'm as interested in the gear as I am in imaging, as I am in processing. I'm a gear fanatic. I like telescopes. I like mounts. I like just everything about them and how they function mechanically. My background professionally as an engineer, so that stuff just all fascinates me. Um, when I first discovered Stellar View, I came across them not too long into the hobby. I knew I wanted to upgrade to them. And at the time, I really didn't have the money for it. But when I came across this used SV80, I jumped on it, and it's been a fantastic scope. And I would definitely recommend anyone that's looking to get a premium scope to consider Stellar View. I don't think you can beat their optics for their price point or the support that you would get after the fact, especially compared to a lot of foreign scopes. Your foreign scopes, your mass-produced imported ones, they're not like they were, from my understanding, decades ago. They're fantastic for what you get, and you probably aren't going to hurt much, getting that versus a premium at this point nowadays. I don't think there's a huge jump in performance. It's really just if you want to pixel peep and really get into the nit and gritty of your images that you'll start to see the slight differences between these mass-produced imported telescopes. But they're fantastic. They're great. But at the same time, there are new models coming out every year. The model you might get might not be supported in a few years or down the road. And if you needed to have service done on it, it might not be possible. So that is one of the nice things with going with a domestic telescope producer, is that they've got lens cells on the shelf and other aspects, and the ability to correct any problems that may occur with your scope down the road for many, many years. So that is a big advantage in my opinion. Yeah. So here is Orion. This is actually just 1 hour on Orion from Bortle 4. But it's actually more than one. It's 1 hour and like a minute, I think, because I took little short exposures to try to get the core not blown out. But Orion's a fantastic target, and much like Adam was saying in his presentation, these are targets that do well in not only Bortle 4 zones, they're great, but if you're in a Bortle 6, 7, 8, or whatever, these brighter targets, you can still get pretty decent images out of them and not be too concerned because of how bright and how strong the signal is coming from them. It's able to swamp that a lot of that noise pollution. These aren't full resolution images either.
We're coming up to we're past 2 hour limit.
Okay.
Or typically, so if you get a couple more or whatever.
Yeah, just a few more and we'll call it quits. So this was one of my first deep space mosaics on the Tadpole and Flaming Star. I think this was around 5 or 6 hours each panel. Here's the Pleiades. This is, I think, around 3.5 hours or so with a UV IR cut. Or I think it might have been 1 hour, no filter, and then the other bit with a UV IR. Yeah, the rest of this is kind of just basic stuff of how I've upgraded my gear. You're free to go to the Stellar Views website. You can access all these newsletters. you go to newsletters right here in the top bar, and they've got months. But just this past August is this one.
I'll put a link in the chat. If
Okay.
anybody wants to click on it.
Cool.
This is Monoceros Christmas tree cluster and stuff. I actually did a re-edit on this one recently and posted it on our Slack channel. So some of y'all may have seen it. And yeah, that's pretty much wraps it up. Here's my Instagram, Rural Astro. The name was fitting when I started this hobby. It's not as fitting now since most of my imaging is being done from here. I guess you gotta log in to see it, but most of my imaging is being done from South Haven lately. But all these past images are from South Haven, from Bortle 7, Bortle 8.
You got to change it to Suburban Astro or whatever.
I know. I was thinking of Bortle Blues was the name I was considering.
Oh yeah, good.
But and then here's the telescope. You also the mirror cell and some of the CAD designing I'm working on right now. I'm in talks with this guy about a 8-inch Zambuto mirror that's got some damage. He's asking $1,000. I don't have that money, but I'm hoping maybe he can take a bit less. I've got about a $600 budget that I can spend on my mirror. But I think it'd be a pretty nice mirror to throw in this, but we'll see. And I'm not entirely sure if the problems that this mirror has try to get to the actual ad. Anyways, but yeah, I appreciate it. We'll wrap it up there, I guess.
Well,
Yeah, can you keep us informed what's going on with building that telescope in the Slack channel?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. I've got a coworker that's going to help with some 3D printing for like the mirror cell supports. The tube I'm going to use, I think, a Hastings industrial pipe. They are industrial, basically drainage or farm pipe, kind of out of Nebraska, but they sell to amateur telescope makers aluminum tubes, and it's
Good.
relatively cost affordable, not too expensive. So still a lot to figure out, but ultimately it's acquiring a mirror, and that's going to dictate the design, because that's going to dictate the tube length and all the position of the secondary, as well as whatever focuser. That also, the type of focuser I get will also play a role in that. And I do want to have this telescope designed with 2 mirror positions so that I can use it visually as well. I was able to go out to one of the recent viewing things out at Burton Sugar Farms, I believe, and that was actually one of my first time doing some actual visual viewing and stuff through some 8-inch and 10-inch Dobbs, and that's something I definitely want to get more into now, is visual.
Okay, well, that's a great presentation. Thanks so much. I've seen your postings on the Slack channel on the telescope, so keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I've got one more item that I'm just going to save for right now. We don't have a lot planned for next month, so you guys are going to have to post some things you like to see for next month on the Slack channel. I'll make a formal ask of it, but Steve, did you have something specific that you wanted to talk next month? Seemed something about the Alberta telescope. No. You look puzzled. Okay, well we'll call this a night, and I will be asking for help for next month's agenda. And
Well, you kind of bullied me into do the City Astro.
well, yeah, if you guys haven't been keeping track of the City Astro work, John got us onto that.
I have been falling in love with the Blemish blaster.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
John, isn't that thing amazing?
Well, but he's got so many tools now that
Yeah.
But he can take narrowband images and make RGB stars now is one of his.
Yeah, that works out pretty good too. I've done that. I've done quite a few of them here. And I just keep going through them. And anytime I try to get one done, oh, here's a new one. I'm like, come on already. I'm trying to.
This
I ain't even
guy's
started the presentation part yet. And I'm still trying to get used to these damn things. And
Now, John, did you hear
working with
Ethan
them.
talk? Did you hear Ethan talk about continuing subtraction?
Yeah.
He's got a tool that just
Yep. He's got
one
that.
button, boom.
Oh yeah,
because there was another one of the other guys who was trying to do it with the pixel math and stuff, and oh, you do this step here, this step here, this step here, then you're good. And he's like, I'll just combine into one script. Bam, done. So yeah.
And you see a PixInsight screen just go nuts. I mean, things are flashing everywhere. Yeah.
Adam Block has a 30-hour series on continuum subtraction. I mean, he goes in lots of detail. One button pushing is a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a complex thing, especially with serial, because there is no one push button with it. You have to do it all with pixel math.
Well, this guy's really John Turner and Marinado go nuts over him. John told us about him. He's just in the zone. Just
okay. Well, I'm going to pick on John like usual. But it seems, Steve, you had something about Ann wanted to see processing.
Yeah, Ann wanted let's just take our southern targets and just go beginning to end. Just show she wants it in PixInsight. Just show WBBP all the way to it being finished.
Okay. Well, we can do that. We can just take an example. You can do some pre-work on M78. I mean, on the whatever the target is, and then we can just as a group process it live.
Right.
That'd be good. Okay.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Well, great meeting. The newbies are just amazing, and I was hoping we get some more of them. We've had about 10 or 12 here in the last 2 months. People that were out there like Ethan and Adam and people that have got skills that we need to share, and so we can get people up to speed real quickly. So, okay, well, hey, great night. I'm going to stop recording here.